All right, good morning and welcome again. This is Jeff Scott. And as you can see on the screen right now, the first line that you see up on the screen is the address to my new YouTube channel. The channel is JPS, that's me, Jeffrey Paul Scott, Jeff Teaches Programming, and the playlist is Jeff Teaches Programming Python. Yesterday, I gave a very quick little overview of what I hope to do, and I'm going to expand upon that today. Yes, we will get into Python. All right, but there's a couple of concepts I'd like to discuss first. All right, and hopefully you're going to find this worth your while. First one, what is tutorial hell? It says, and how to avoid it to improve as a developer. I have been guilty myself of falling into tutorial hell, both as an instructor and as a student. All right. When I was teaching full-time, when we would start to be doing a class and a new topic, I would typically, this was before the days of ChatGPT, so I would typically go out and YouTube whatever it was. I know, for example, one semester, when I was teaching at a technical college in Wisconsin, I was told, well, starting next semester, we're going to be offering iPhone programming. And I knew nothing about it. I had used a Mac or an Apple machine, but it didn't have one. So I went out and bought one and started looking at tutorials. The problem with tutorial hell is that you can get so wrapped up in watching tutorials, and you can do a lot with them. I mean, a lot of tutorials in here are not just well written, they're fantastically written. But if all you do is spend all your time looking at tutorials, all right, you're never really going to get anything accomplished. When I found this, myself falling into this as a student, for years, I've been a frustrated guitar player. I'm not very good, but I try to get better. And I've watched all sorts of different teachers online. I have even signed up for some classes online. I even took lessons from two different individuals, one of them many years ago, and another one recently where I stopped about a year ago. Now, when I started this many, many years ago, I was playing and taking lessons for about 2 or 3 months from a gentleman I got to know. And he was a guitar player in a band and really, really good too. And one day he said to me, Jeff, I've got good news and bad news for you. All right. And I said, okay, what's the good news? He said, the good news is you change chords as well as any student I've ever had. You're very good at going from, a C chord to a G chord or whatever. And I said, well, that's good. What's the bad news? And this will make more sense today because, we're going to be talking in just a second about records, okay? When I was in my teens, even before that, we all had a record player and we listened to 45s. Those were a single record that had a front and had a back. And once you got a little more money, you bought an album, which was a series of songs. Well, what my teacher, Phil, said to me at the time was, the good news is you can change chords quickly. The bad news is, all right, you do them at 33 RPM and we're living in a 78 RPM world. And what he meant was I could do things, but I couldn't do them fast enough where they were any good. What does this have to do with tutorial hell? Well, with tutorial hell, if you go and watch yourself a really good video on YouTube and you go out and implement it, even if you type in the same thing, that's not bad. But if you watch a video and then the only thing you do is go in and watch another video, and the only thing you do after that is you watch another video, you're not getting better. All right, all you're doing is watching other people. Okay, and unless you can do, you're not going to improve. That's just the first point I wanted to make. And going along with that, analysis paralysis. I don't know if I've ever been guilty of this in my own life, but probably I have. Years ago, I worked for a company. I won't say where. I won't say the person's name, but I worked with a person who was, I thought, quite gifted. They were always going out to conferences all over the United States to learn different aspects of the field that I was working in. And for a while, it was like literally 2 or 3 months in a row. They would go someplace for a week to a conference. They'd come back and work a day or two, then go to another week to a conference, come back, and this just continued and continued. And I wondered to myself, wow, this person must have accrued so much knowledge. All right, are they ever going to use it? I mean, do they have time to come in and use it? And I believe that what happened was the people who were my superiors kind of had the same issue. And after a while, they asked this person to start putting into practice some of the things they'd been learning. And no, just so you know, no, it was not me. All right. And basically, they couldn't do it. And they ended up losing their job over it. All I want to mention is with analysis paralysis, you got to start. All right. You know, there's some kind of a saying that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And there's a lot of truth to that. I would also take it, farther. All right. Literally, you're going to start something, be it Python or be it something else, where you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to fail miserably. All right. And where people really get good at something is when they say, you know what, I failed, but I'm going to keep going. All right. I've mentioned before, I'm almost 68 years old, and I'll always remember back to when I was 16 years old going into driver's education. We had a course set up in the parking lot of the high school I was going to. And we all had, literally, this is how many years ago it was, walkie-talkies in our car. And we had the teacher who had the master walkie-talkie. We weren't supposed to talk to one another, but we were supposed to listen to the teacher. One day, evidently, I was too close to the curb while I was driving, and the teacher was like, Scott, stop it. You're too close to the curb. And I basically just looked around and I ran the curb. And literally, I went up onto the curb. It wasn't terrible. I didn't do any damage to the car or anything. But it was just because I was paralyzed, so to speak. And what I noticed was a few weeks later, the course was 2 weeks long. And at the end of the second week, the teacher came up to me and said, you know what? When we started, you were one of the worst, if not the worst driver in the class. And he said, now you're one of the best, if not the best. And it was just a matter of continuous practice. So that's what you have to do. I want to mention two more things here. All right. And then we'll cut this one off. First, I found this article online, 10 reasons why Python is the future of programming. And is Python the future of programming? I don't know. If I didn't believe there was going to be a great future in it, I wouldn't take the time to start teaching it. But I want to give you the 10 reasons that they've got here. Number one, easy to learn. Well, easy is a relative term. You might find that some of the stuff that we do in here as we get working is fairly easy to pick up. As it says, Python typically has a simple, really it does have a simple intuitive syntax. Okay? But as I mentioned, it's a relative term because some of the stuff that we'll go over you might find very confusing. Number two, versatile. You can use Python for just about anything. I've heard it kind of described as a, what is it, like when you get one of those pocket knives that have a lot of different things that you can do with them. It's kind of like that. You can use it for a lot of things. Doesn't mean it's the best language for everything, but it can be used for virtually anything. Next, it has a large community. Yeah. I mentioned Python.org the other day. And it's a great place to start. And there's all sorts of groups. It's open source, whereas it says it means it's free for you to use. You can contribute to its development. Interoperability. You can use it in combination with almost any other language. It has robust libraries, which means that a lot of times before you go out and want to do something, you should check and see whether or not somebody's already written something that you can use. All right, we'll go over things like NumPy, Django, TensorFlow as we get going. Machine learning, this is where I want to get to. Machine learning, the things in the 7, 8, 9 here are where this course, so to speak, is going to go to. All right, as it says, Python is a language of choice for machine learning. It's an ideal language for artificial intelligence, or AI. And as of right now, it's the preferred language for data science. Finally, as it says right here, there are tons of career opportunities. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. And the last thing I want to say, because I didn't want this to be too long, it's already 11 minutes. All right, but the last thing I want to quickly talk about in here is, where are you? Here we go. This. I literally saw this article online, and again, I'm using some of the stuff in here from a site called medium.com. If you go out to medium.com, you can pay $5 a month, or I think if you want to do it annually, it's $50 a year, and get articles sent to you all the time, usually daily. This is one of the ones that I got. How to learn Python using Chat GPT-4. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that you learn Python totally using Chat GPT as opposed to me or something else, or a book or whatever, another course. But they talk about some good steps in here. So this is where I'm going to pick it up tomorrow, starting to familiarize ourselves with Python basics. We'll talk about variables, data types, etc. We'll get into loops, conditional statements, and functions. All right? Second, ask questions. If you do have questions, feel free to contact me, okay? All right, and maybe I should do this, maybe I shouldn't, I don't know. But if you want, the email address that I basically look at every day is jpscott@charter.net. So if you want, send me an email. I'm not saying I'll answer it right away, but I'll get to it, and I'll try to my best to give you an answer. In order to get better, one thing we'll have to do in here is practice coding. All right? If I go in and create a program, I don't care how simplistic it is, especially for those of you who are just starting. All right? Code along with me, or when I finish, rewatch the video and code it yourselves. It's one thing to watch somebody else do something. It's another to do it yourself. As it says, practice solving problems, reinforce your understanding of concepts. Request code reviews. Well, that's going to be a little bit harder. All right. But as it says, what you can do is you can write your own program, put it into Chat GPT, and ask for feedback or suggestions for improvement. You know, in a way, using Chat GPT is a little bit humbling. And what I mean by that is the first time I decided I was going to use Chat GPT. The first time I decided I was going to use it, I had written a test for a Java script class I was teaching. I went and wrote the test, then I wrote the key. Then I went in and literally put the test into Chat GPT. And the key that it came up with, or the answer, was probably better than mine. So like I said, it can be humbling. All right. One of the things we have to do in here for this to be successful is to explore the different built-in Python libraries and frameworks. All right. Some of them are mentioned here. I'm not going to work on any of those. Next, work on projects. We'll have to start small here. And if you've ever watched a lecture with me before, you know I always talk about the crawl, walk, run mentality. All right? I've got a 10-month-old grandson right now, Brooks, and he's crawling, but he's starting to hold, brace himself onto things, and it won't be too long till he'll be walking, and knowing him, it won't be too long till he'll be running. The other example of that I give is with my own kids. I still remember the first day we took them for swim lessons, and they saw the big pool and they were all excited. My oldest daughter decided she wanted to jump off the diving board, etc., but they didn't do that. The first day they went into the kiddie pool, they got acclimated to just being in the water, and they did that for a few days. Then they worked their way over to the shallow end and got it to where they were comfortable jumping in. Then they went over to the deep end. That's what we have to do in here for you to not only understand, but comprehend and be successful. Finally, as it says, stay updated. Again, I do want to mention a couple things in here quickly before we start, that as we get going in here, this is what I'm going to use. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going out to Muroc Books, muroc.com, and I'm going to go and I'm going to find all of their Python books. One of the books I have is Muroc's Python Programming. All right, and I'm going to rely on that for a lot of the material that I talk about. Eventually, I want to get into Python for data science and Python for data analysis. All right, so that'll be one book right here. Muroc's Python Programming. Would I suggest it? Yes, I would. Next, let's see. There are a series of books that some of which I purchased, some of which I'm going to purchase, but have not yet. Let me find them for you. Oh, where are you? Let's do it this way. That's my granddaughter. That's my grandson. All right, so let's do it this way. Let's come in here and go out to Amazon.com. All right, and here I'm going to type in Python books. All right, there are a ton of Python books, but one of the ones I'm going to be using is this one by Eric Mattis that I have called Python Crash Course. It's an excellent book. All right, another one that I'm going to be using is Automate the Boring Stuff, second edition by Al Swigert. You can even get to this book for free and read it online, and I'll mention that when we get to that point. All right, but there's a whole series that are here. So Python Crash Course, there's other ones. There we are, some of them. The Big Book of Small Projects, Beyond the Basic Stuff with Python, Object-Oriented Python, all right, etc. You can see some of these, and I'm going to be looking through some of them as we go on. So again, that's what I had for this one. What I'm going to do next in my next lecture, which probably won't come out until tomorrow evening, because I babysit these two on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. But after they leave, I'm going to try to do my first thing where I'm going to go over. And right now, if you take a look, if I go into Control Panel, all right, you'll see that when I look under Programs and Features, that I have on here both. Python is already on here. All right, that I just brought up very recently. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to uninstall it. I want to start new. So it's telling me that it failed. I know that I had a problem with this before. I might get the same error on here. And I might not. This is the latest version that I installed a couple weeks ago, Python 3.12.3, and I think this one will go through the uninstall here. Once I get done with that, I'm going to go over to Visual Studio Code. Not Visual Studio, but Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to uninstall that as well. Sorry, I guess I could pause and let it finish. Shouldn't take too long. All right, uninstall was successful. You'll notice I no longer have, under Python, I no longer have 3.12 or whatever. And this, I'm not even sure what that is with this launcher and stuff, but that's fine. So let's see if I can find there's Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to uninstall that as well. This should go a lot faster. So that's gone as well. So tomorrow when we start, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install both products. They're both free that I'm going to be using. And after we do that, we'll get in, we'll talk about the language. We'll talk about what makes up the language, some of the syntax, and we'll actually write some programs. I'll talk to you then. Have a good day.